Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is the co-founder of the Lefkoe Institute, whose mission is to significantly improve the quality of life on the planet. She has helped thousands of clients worldwide recreate their lives by ridding themselves of a wide variety of problems, including phobias, relationships, procrastination, and much more. Her programs have reached over 150,000 people worldwide. Her personal vision is to transform the way we parent. She believes that if we raise a conscious generation of children, violence will end, people will treat each other with respect and dignity, and life on this planet will be better for everyone. She is the author of Parenting the Lefkoe Way, a manual for raising confident kids. Welcome to the show, Shelly Lefkoe.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, I am so excited you're here because your bio is huge. You've actually written a few books, and all of them I'd love to dive into because they're topics that I think that I'm very interested in, and I know my audience would be. But why don't we start a little bit with your background? How did you get into this type of work? And you have another book coming out, and so maybe you can kind of catch us up to speed, and we'll dive right in.
Okay, so I love, we were talking a little bit about having those spiritual experiences. Basically my late husband was on what he called a spiritual intellectual journey to discover why people, including him, knew that we should do things and didn't do them, or knew that we shouldn't do things and did them. So we all know if we exercise, we'll live longer. If we eat well, we'll stay healthier. We all know seatbelts save lives, and yet we don't do that. Some of us go into relationships going in that we know are not going to work out. So he was looking at his own life, things that should have turned out, kept not turning out. And he was on a plane to California and he started journaling. And at the end of the trip, and now I'm going back, Matt, almost 35 years ago, where when you said to somebody, we help people get rid of limiting beliefs, they'd say, what do you mean a belief? Like a religious belief? Like people had no idea what we were talking about. Now, of course, everybody's on the belief bandwagon because everybody knows you can't make change without changing beliefs. So he came back and he said, I had this aha experience on the plane. And he said, I realized that all of our behavior, emotions, and our reality are a function of the mostly unconscious beliefs that we have. He said, he was very modest. He was a genius. But he said, I downloaded this process that can help people eliminate beliefs. And I tried it on the people that I was going to. We were living in New York at the time. He was flying to California. And he said, I did it on the people who I was pitching a project with, and they hired me on the spot. And they had other people to see that they didn't see. So a couple of weeks later, he said, I want you to see me do this. So a friend of ours volunteered, and he sat and he said, what do you want to change? And she said, well, I want to be in a relationship again. I'm divorced and I really want to meet somebody, and I keep not meeting people. And he said to her, well, what do you believe? And she said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, what do you believe about men? And she goes, oh, men are assholes, men are jerks, men are selfish, men are blah, blah, blah. And he said, and what do you believe about relationships? And she said, well, you have to give up your independence, and relationships are suffocating. And, I'm sitting there watching this, and he picked one belief and he got rid of it with her. And I had this experience, Matt, where I literally almost fell off my chair. And the voice in my head said, that is what you're on this planet to do. And it was like in that moment, I knew that I was here to do this work. And it was very, very powerful moment, probably one of the most powerful moments of my life. And for the past 35 years, I've been working with people in virtually every country around the world. And, I speak, and I just came back from Vietnam, and I was in Russia right before the pandemic. And I love speaking to groups, and I love doing workshops, but my one-on-one practice is my heart and soul. And we've created a process that helps people do this work that you can buy like a product. So anyway, that's how I got started. Almost 30 some odd years ago.
Wow. Well, 35 years ago to be talking about any of this kind of thing, mindset, spirituality, limiting beliefs, the subconscious mind, you're going to be like a kook. Even when I was getting into this in my teenage years, all my friends thought I was a nut. And, even going into my adulthood, it's only been the last maybe 5 or 10 years where people have started to accept this or move towards it when we speak about mental health and understanding the mind. So thank you for trailblazing and, doing the hard work, because if people are giving me crap, then it must have been worse for you. I think limiting beliefs are a good place to start. When I'm working with a client, one of the things I have them do is just get them to write out their beliefs as well, right? And like, what do they think about these different things? But then the next process I'll take is like, well, so what's the belief you want? And I'd love to hear your solution for, or your process for uncovering those limiting beliefs, because a lot of people don't know they have them. Like the first example you gave, that person probably didn't realize their beliefs around men and relationships are what were causing them the issue. So that's why this keeps happening. We're not even aware of them. So I'd love to hear your process on discovering them and then giving ourselves a better one. And a common one is money. Another common one is relationships. And we have these themes that all of us go through. So I just love your take on it.
Thanks. So the first thing is the spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual part of my process is people go into an altered state at the end of the process, whether you do it online or you do it with me, and you have an experience that you created that belief, that you were here before that belief existed. And so your life is consistent with your beliefs. So if you create the beliefs that create your life, who you really are is the creator of your life. Who you are is God in your universe. And people have a very profound experience of that. So we don't create new beliefs. And there are lots of reasons we don't do that, but one of which is we like people getting that you're not good enough or not good enough, you're not important or not important. Who you are is the creator of that distinction, so to speak. So we have lots of techniques. We have trainings where we train people to do what I do. So the first thing is how you discover them. So the first step is to look at what your pattern is. So eliminating beliefs is only a means to an end. People have patterns. So by a pattern is observable. So I could see you procrastinate. I could see you stressing about money. I could see you looking in your bank book and not having any. I can see you having relationships and having people yell at you or not treat you well, which is obviously, you can't see that. You can't see judgments or assessments, but you can see patterns. And what people want to get rid of are patterns. I'm doing something I don't want to do. I want to stop doing something I am doing. I want to have something I don't have, or I want to not have something I have. And those are the 4 kinds of patterns. So they come to me and they say, okay, I want to stop procrastinating. That's a big one. So I say, well, when you procrastinate, do you have any thoughts or feelings right before you do it? Or if you want to get out of an unhealthy relationship, when you think about leaving, what thoughts and feelings do you have? And then I will uncover the beliefs based on what they tell me. So if you're listening at home or at the gym, wherever you're listening to a podcast, if you think about logically, what might someone believe that doesn't trust people. Like I have a hard time trusting people. That's a pattern, right? I don't have a lot of close friends. I don't tell people things at work. I'm not involved, engaged with people. What do you think someone might believe that doesn't trust people? People are not trustworthy, right? When you think about not being successful, what thoughts and feelings come up? I'm not good enough. When somebody ignores you, what do you feel? Not important. So the belief is, I'm not important. So just getting somebody's thoughts and feelings will usually uncover the beliefs. And sometimes you have to dig, so the most common beliefs that people have are 5 beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. Mistakes and failures are bad. If I make a mistake or fail, I'll be rejected. And what makes me good enough is having other people think well of me. Now, again, you want to uncover a belief. Somebody says, I'm a workaholic. I can't stop working. I don't know my kids. My wife's ready to leave me. I'm worth $10 million. That's in my new book coming up, because that's a true story. I had a man call me, I'm on the cover of business publications. When is it going to be enough? And I said, well, when you think about not being successful, imagine losing it all tomorrow. What do you feel? And he said, not important. So he has what we call survival strategy beliefs. Here's a belief. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. Imagine a beach ball. I have to hold this beach ball underwater because I don't want to walk around looking at that. So what makes me good enough is achieving things. So when you're a kid, you get acknowledged for A's or goals, and your parents make a big deal about your grades. You start concluding what makes me good enough is achieving things. So now I have to achieve things in order to keep this beach ball underwater. But I want to go to my kid's game. I really want to be there. But what if I don't finish this project I'm working on? Or what if I can't get on that radio show or TV show? But I have to keep doing, because I have to keep proving. Because here's the thing, your achievements never get rid of this belief. The beach ball keeps coming up. And you spend your whole life. If you are the oldest of 10, you have the belief generally, what makes me good enough is taking care of people, because the only thing you ever got acknowledged for as a kid was taking care of your siblings, helping your mom, right? So what makes me good enough is taking care of people. Now I'm a caretaker. Now I'm the one in the family. Everybody says, can you take care of dad? Can you take care of mom? Can you take care of the problems? Can you take care of the house they left us? And as long as I'm doing it, this little sucker stays underwater, but it's exhausting because it's driven. So when you want to uncover your beliefs, you have to look at what do you do to not feel that thing, right? So let's assume money. Money's a good one. There's a lot of different patterns with money, but one client recently told me, I hold on to it no matter how much I have. I can't spend it. I can't enjoy it. I just don't let myself have things. And I said, what do you believe? And he thought about it and he said, I don't know. So I said, well, when you think about having a lot of money and money flowing to you easily, what's the first thought in your head? And he goes, money's hard to get. Money is scarce and hard to get. Very common belief. And again, that's one. So that's one way. Another way is go back into your childhood and look at, how was money in your house? What might you have concluded from how your parents were around money? So my father would scream and yell about the bills every month, that he was going to rip the phone out of the wall every month. I'm ripping the phone out, right? Because the bill was too high. You got to save for a rainy day, got to save, you got to sock that money away. My father was a child of the Depression. For him, money was scarce and hard to get. He had holes in his shoes when he was a kid. And no matter how much money he made, it didn't matter. Those beliefs, and I'll tell you why in a minute, those beliefs stay with us. Okay. So if you go back to your childhood and say, what would I have concluded listening to my father? Money is scarce and hard to get. The belief that ran my life and runs most people's lives is what makes me good enough is having other people think well of me. And you used my favorite word when you talked about your audience and you said they're authentic people. And I went, I love that. I love authenticity. But what keeps us from being authentic, Matt, is the belief that what makes me good enough is having other people think well of me. So I'm always worried, did I dress okay? And did I say the right thing? And my focus is on over here. When I got rid of that belief, I said it was my Martin Luther King Jr. moment because I was free at last. I can speak now in front of 600 people and know that not all of them are going to love me. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, and while I'm interested in feedback always, I no longer define myself by what other people think. And what that's allowed me to do is serve. Because my focus is over there. It's not on me. I'm good.
Well, I love that. And I love the last sentence as well. Like, what did you say? Like no longer allowing
Define myself.
Yes, by what other people think. I think that holds so many people back. And so I've used the example as like when you go from, what you can get to what you can give, it's not so much what the other person thinks. And I remember David Lombard, one of my Native American teachers, telling me once, he goes, "You're always going to be the devil to somebody." And I don't remember why he said that to me at that time.
Great.
But I think it's a really important one because for those of us who want to do something positive and want to do something helpful, you got to realize that there's going to always be somebody who thinks that you doing that thing, you're going to be the devil. So you have to be comfortable with that, and so it's just a very fascinating perspective to deal with. But again, it takes that idea of, off of you. And I don't know if it's like egoic or like self-absorbed or what I would call it, but it's like when I work with people who are talented at art or writing, or they want to accomplish something, they're the only ones who are worried about putting it out. If somebody is not that good at art, they're not that good at music, they really have no problem sharing it or putting out the little crappy song, but it's because their identity is wrapped around this thing. And then they think, oh my God, what will they think? Right. So it's a very crippling belief to have. And so I really love your examples, and I'd love for you to go a little step further now, because I think this is so important. It's been interesting for me in my coaching process to see people in their 50s and 60s and older have the same limiting belief from a childhood event or childhood experience that they've taken their whole life that no longer serves them. Some people will say it's because you adopt this belief for survival mode. You're a kid and you're in survival mode. You're just trying to get by. So you take that belief, but then it's time to let it go, like the training wheels or something. It's like, all right, we're ready for adult beliefs now around relationships, around money, around different circumstances, but you still have the same belief because it kept you safe. So you keep riding that thing until you have an opportunity to look at it and then let it go. So I'd love your perspective on that next step of like, how do we let it go so it's no longer unconsciously maybe not ruining, I'd say pushing us to make decisions we don't prefer, that are not in our best interest.
Love the question. So first of all, so what you said is not true. Okay. So sometimes you take a belief, you take a belief. I'm going to tell you how a belief is formed, and then I'm going to tell you how to get rid of it, but you're not going to get rid of it listening to me. But I will tell you, like, I want to give, and I'm going to give you something to take away, I promise. And I'm going to give you a free opportunity to eliminate a belief as well for those of you listening. However, you might believe that your survival depends on something. That's why we call it a survival strategy. But that's not why the belief stays with you. Here's why the belief stays with you. You come into this world as a little ball of consciousness. You don't know anything about yourself, life, people, or the world, right? Now, every child, and I'm going to give you the long version because you have a 3-year-old. Every child alive in every country, my client in Uganda said this to me. Sorry, it's hailing out. It's just like, oh my goodness, there's hail. So when I ask people, Matt, so when you come home at night, if you walk in and your 3-year-old hasn't seen you, he or she? She, what does she do when she sees you?
Usually depends. Sometimes she gives me a hug. A lot of the time she's engrossed in her games and I just barely get a hello.
But if she sees you, what does she do?
I'll get a hug and
okay, so normally people say they run to me. Okay, that's mostly
unfortunately unfortunately I don't get that all the time. She's more of a mama's girl right now.
Right. So your wife walks in, she runs to her, right?
Yes. Oh, definitely.
But there are 3 things that every child wants, right? So these first things she wants from you is a hug, right? Affection. And then when she wants you, what does she want?
For me, play. She always wants me to play with her, take her tobogganing, do things.
Attention.
Yeah. So 100% undivided attention.
Undivided
Very
attention.
Specific.
So
yeah.
Affection, attention. And then the third one is acknowledgement, right? They want you to say, wow, look what you did. And then their little face lights up, right? Now, I don't know if she's just 3 or almost 4.
3 and a little bit. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So is she asking the question yet? So every child alive asks one question, one word question. Do you know what the question is?
No.
So if you tell her, no, you can't, what does she want to know?
Oh, why?
Why?
We're almost there, I think.
So why she's going to start saying, Daddy, why do you have to go to work? Daddy, why won't you play with me? Daddy, why can't I have dessert? Daddy, why is the sky blue? Daddy, why is mommy yelling? Why are you fighting? Right? So we start deducing what the world is about based on what we see in the first 6 to 8 years of life. Okay. So if you criticize your child, they conclude I'm not good enough. If you ignore them, they conclude I'm not important. If you don't get affection, they conclude I'm not worth loving. If you're walking around the house going, oh God, I can't pay the bills. And how are we going to make it? They're watching and they conclude money is scarce and hard to get. Now, here's the secret sauce. Okay, and I'm giving you my secret sauce. We think we see our beliefs in the world. I saw that I wasn't good enough. I saw money is scarce and hard to get. I saw people can't be trusted. Now, I'm going to make that real in a second. So I'll say it. Anything you can see has a color, shape, and location. Yes?
Yep.
Good. You cannot see a belief. A belief is an assessment, okay? But you can't, it's impossible, and I'm going to do a double negative. It's impossible to not believe something you think you saw.
Okay.
So if somebody said to you, Shelly's a blonde, what would you say?
That's not true.
But no, she's blonde. I'm telling you, she's a blonde. What would you say?
Well, I saw otherwise.
No, she's not, right? So I used to do this with, I haven't done this in a long time, but I used to have an iPod, not an iPod. what was the phone without the phone? iPod,
Oh,
iPad
like
Pro.
the
iPad,
iTouch or I don't know, like the one that just had the iShuffle. Talking
no,
about the
no,
song
no,
button.
that's the iPod pad.
The
No,
iPad is the big one.
no, it was an iPod Pro. I can't remember what they called it, but it was a cell phone without a phone. So you could do things on it, but there was no telephone attached to it.
Gotcha.
And I used to say, does everybody see my iPhone? And they'd say, yes, you have an iPhone. I'd say, would you stake your life? I had an iPhone. They'd say, absolutely. And then I would turn around. I'd say, it's an iPod Pro. It's not a phone. There's no phone in here. And they'd go, oh, I never saw an iPhone. I made that up. It's like Santa Claus. You believe
Right.
in Santa Claus for 8 years. And one day you go, I never saw Santa Claus. I made that up. The belief is gone, never comes back. So telling people to write it on a piece of paper and burn it and tear it up and say it a million times and all the stuff people say is lovely. It just doesn't generally get rid of the belief because you still think you saw it. So I just worked with, I've had 5 Harvard PhDs who had the belief I'm stupid. Now, they know they're not stupid. They have evidence that they're not stupid. When I took them back to, I'm not good enough, to I'm stupid, one of them said to me, in fact, we went to do work in a corporation. We used to do this in companies a lot. And he was the head psychologist and he was miserable. He hated his job. He wanted to leave. And I said to him, what do you believe that has you not leave? And after a little bit of pride, he goes, well, because I'm stupid. And I said, you're stupid. You have a PhD from Harvard. He said, yes. He said, I know I'm not. But when he was a kid, his father used to slap him on the back of the head and say, genius, every time he made a mistake. And I said to him, so I went through all the different steps of the process, looking at alternative interpretations and all the steps. And then we get to the end, and not the end, but almost the end. And I said, so doesn't it seem like you saw I'm stupid? And he said, every day of my life. I said, did you ever really see it? And he said, yes, I saw that I was stupid. I said, okay, I'm looking at the same video as you. Does I'm stupid have a color, shape, and location? No. So did you see I'm stupid? No. I saw my father slap me on the back of the head. Oh, where was I'm stupid? I made that up. Then we look at meaning. And I want to go back to something you said about worrying about what other people think. So the underpinning of my work is based on the premise that events have no inherent meaning. What I'm saying is, you don't know anything for sure because something happens. So my husband died. I loved him very much. We were married 35 years. We had an extraordinary marriage. But the fact that he died does not, so when I was home, after I grieved and cried and whatever, and I noticed I didn't want to get out of bed. So I used this technique that we teach. What happened? Morty died. What meaning am I giving it? I'm going to starve to death. I don't know how to run a business. Not my. Give me people. I will work with anybody, anytime. Oprah could sit right in front of me and I'm good. I don't care if it's the Queen of England, but run a business? You got to be kidding me. I didn't know the difference between a P&L and a balance sheet. So I said, well, the fact that he died could mean I'm going to starve to death. And it could mean that I'm going to step up and figure it out, which I did. 7 years later, my business is doing way better than it did back then. So the fact that he died didn't mean that. Next day, what happened? Morty died. What meaning did I give it? I'm going to be alone forever. Well, it could mean that. And it could mean there's a lot of heat left in this old body. You're going to have a second act. But the fact that he died doesn't tell me anything. It doesn't mean anything. Now, I'm going to do a little bit more with you with that so you can go play with it. Meaning is in your mind. It's not in events. Events don't have meaning, right? So I'm going to be the keynote speaker at Mark Hyman's Feel Good Summit. And I'm going to open up the conference every day. And one day I'm talking about beliefs. Beliefs get formed in the past. Meaning comes from the beliefs that you form, right? So if you form a belief that dogs are dangerous and a dog comes running towards you, you're going to give it the meaning that dog's going to hurt me and you're going to feel fear. So all of our emotions are caused by the meaning we give events. Okay. So I'm going to do a talk on beliefs. I'm going to do a talk on meaning. And then I think I did maybe a parenting. I don't remember what the third one was. And everybody tells me, don't tell 500 people that events have no meaning. They'll go crazy. They'll say, what about Hitler? And what about 9/11? And what about when somebody beats you? And it's just too much. Just take it to the place where you go, it doesn't mean what you said it meant, right? And meaning is in your mind. So I have all my talk. My talk is done. It's on the thing. I'm ready to go. And I look at the audience and I look at these people and I said, listen, I was advised to not take you all the way there, but I care too much about you to do that, to not give you all that I have. So here's what I'm going to ask you. I'm going to say something incredibly provocative. Your brain is going to go. I said, here's what I'm asking you. You can come up and scream and yell at me at the end of my talk. But while I'm in it, just put your thoughts aside and listen to me and think, what if what she's saying has some value? Let me go the distance with her and then see how I feel. And for those of you who can't do that, I apologize in advance. I get to the end of my talk, not one person came over and screamed and yelled at me. And I walked around asking people, so how was that for you? And they said to me, wow, that was just, I was up all night thinking about that last night, you know. If I was worried about what other people thought of me, I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do that. So that belief keeps you from being your authentic self. And if we go back to events have no meaning, all that's saying is, if you get fired, oh God, I got fired. Wait a minute. It could mean, what meaning are you giving it? I'm going to starve. My family's going to starve. What else could it mean? Could mean that there's a better job waiting for you. Could mean this is the opportunity to change careers. You've always wanted to do that. But the fact that you got fired doesn't tell us anything. It has no meaning. We don't know anything. Is that a lot?
Yeah, well, no, I loved it. It's funny when you talk, I'm just like kind of listening and enjoying your stories. It reminds me of the Zen farmer story where it goes through and he has these horses, right? And he loses the horses and his neighbor says, oh, what bad luck, your horse ran away. And then he comes back and there's like 5 new horses come. He's like, oh, what good luck you had. And he said, maybe. He keeps saying maybe, and all these events keep happening. Yeah, perhaps, And so we allow these events to kind of move forward. And I know a lot of people who have had traumatic experiences or hard experiences or at least experiences that were not preferred, but usually they're pretty painful in nature, and that course corrected their life to a much higher state of being, a much higher state of happiness, and they would take that trauma all day, every day to get them to where they were, because it was a catalyst for them. And so when we attach meaning, especially in the limiting way, is like, oh, I've like one guy on, I've been talking to him or talking about him a few podcasts in a row, but Chris Duffin, he's one of the strongest guys that have ever lived, squatted and deadlifted 1,000 pounds for reps, very successful business guy. And his big goal started when he had a big injury in his two pecs, I guess, both of his shoulders and his pecs. He had big surgery and he was screwed. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to come back and I'm going to set these world records. Like he could allow that injury to derail what his goals were and what he wanted to be, but he gave it a different meaning. He's like, I'm going to come back from this. So he decided that rather than became a victim to it. And it seems like in your stories and listening to them, it's like what we decide. And what you did when your husband passed, and I'm so sorry to hear that, sounds horrible, is that when you woke up, you took that analysis. What am I allowing this to mean? So you nipped it in the butt rather than allowed yourself to go 6 months, a year, 5 years, or a decade, or the rest of your life with a limiting belief because this happened. And the thing is, with one of those circumstances is, I don't know if you're going to get a lot of help from your friends because they're going to understand it. Right? They're going to say, you know what? We get it. That's you can crumble. Like, we're going to try to pick you up, but also at the same time, we totally get why. And then it's kind of how David Goggins will talk about it too. It's like you allow yourself to be this victim, but you have a good reason for it. So, okay. You know what I mean? It's not horrible. And then, his idea is always, try to get that inner, I won't use his words, but inner wuss out. But what I like from your direction is just the awareness of it. As your internal dialogue starts to fire off, you're taking an account, right? And then you're nipping in the butt. Is this true? Is this real? Does this mean that? And that's a very powerful process. And I think that many people struggle with the imposter syndrome of not being good enough. And I don't know if I remember at the beginning when I was talking about working in extreme sports and working with these athletes, but 9 times out of 10, if they would come to me because they were placing second, was because they weren't worthy. I would just know, right? They're like, hey man, like, I'm the best at this. I'm world free ride champion, blah, blah, blah. But man, every time I do a competition, I come second or I crash. Okay, great. Let's have a conversation. And then just waiting and then doink, not good enough to be first. And then we would go through that, some sort of memory. And then boom, lo and behold, 9 times out of 10, the next time they would crush their next performance because they were worthy to be number one. They had that integrated in their state of being. And your unconscious mind or that part of you will sabotage you, because the mind is controlling the body kind of thing. And like the deepest fears, it's not going to let them happen. If your deepest fear is to be number one and everybody's going to be seeing you and on the magazines and all this stuff, guess what? We're on the way down. It's like, whoop, there you go. You're going to go tell them like, oh, we're safe now. That was a close one because we were really doing well and we only had a little bit more to go. So thankfully I've crashed it so that we won't be on this magazine. So it's a very fascinating thing. There's so many ways we could take this episode because I think you're an expert in many fields. And I like how what you're touching on is very universal. I don't think that we have infinite complex universal problems. I think they all stem from basically the roots of what you're saying. And Greg Braden says there's 3 universal fears. I always forget them. So I invite people to Google them, but they're not being loved, not being accepted, not being worthy, something like that. Loved, accepted, worthy, or abandoned, one of those. I get 3. I think 2 of the 3 or 3 of the 4 or whatever it is, but it's the same idea. And so when we're course correcting, you touched on this a little bit. When we want to install the new belief, is it going through that process that you teach at the Lefkoe Institute, or what do we do from there? We're like, you know what? Because what I can tell from your story, and I know this, it's like running in the sand with a weighted sled or swimming into the current. Life is tough and it's not going easily and you've got this drag, but once that gets lifted, you're a lot lighter. If you've just run with this, 40-pound bag on you for 10 years and then you take that off, you're like, holy smokes, I can really move now. And so you get this feeling of lightness, of aliveness, of possibility. And that comes from your entire, state of being.
Yeah. I'll kind of reiterate because I probably didn't close it earlier. We don't form new beliefs because the truth is, you're not important or not important. You're not good enough or not good enough. You're the creator of that distinction, which is much more powerful than saying, I'm important. And, maybe, you can create it. There's nothing wrong with creating a new belief, but then you keep, again, thinking you are your beliefs. You're not your beliefs. You're that way. So I want to talk about something with you because I think it'll go to an interesting place. So people talk about spirituality. And I know people, Jack Kornfield, who started Spirit Rock and has written a lot of books about Buddhism, used to say, I would go to Tibet and sit at the feet of masters for 6 months and turn my body into white light. And I was still the same jerk in relationships that I was before I went. Sorry, I have a cramp. I'm standing up for a little bit. Yeah. So he never handled his creation, this piece, right? So spirituality is wonderful. When you get, I'm one with God, or you have these amazing experiences, or you meditate and you're peaceful. I am not in any way undermining that, the importance of that, the value of that. And I hear a lot of people say a lot of spiritual, mumbo jumbo, and they don't live their lives commensurate with it, right? So I taught my kids, you treat every human being with dignity and respect. I don't care who they are. I don't care what they do. You can say, I don't want to be around you. I don't like to be spoken to that way, but every human being has to be treated with dignity and respect. So it's really important that you work on getting to higher levels of consciousness is wonderful, and there are a lot of people who will speak to that about getting higher levels of consciousness and evolving. And my sense is, if you don't get rid of the beliefs, it's very difficult to be congruent. That's a good word. You want to be congruent. And you're like they say the mind and the body, and now they say mind body, because the mind is part of the body. We're all one consciousness. And so what beliefs do, and again, getting rid of them, not adding new ones, because here's the other thing, where the belief came from was observing something that you think you saw. So the belief got solidified because I saw that was true. I saw relationships don't work. I mean, my parents fought every day, and my aunt and uncle got divorced, and I can't not believe that. But once you get, I never saw that. I just saw my parents fighting. I never saw relationships don't work. And again, we go through in the process looking at alternative interpretations like, yeah, unconscious relationships don't work, where people are going, you did it, you're the victim is, all that stuff. Those don't work maybe, but conscious relationships might. And we kind of break up the reality of what you saw so that you can go to that next step. Making new beliefs is like affirmations. It's like, I am important. Like, where are you going to look for affirmations for that? That people love you, that they're kind to you? Well, what if they're not? Does that mean then again, you're back to not? So it's just a little, I don't know. It's just a little amorphous to do it that way. So we don't. And if you just get rid of the belief I'm not important, then your pattern's going to change. You don't have to believe, sometimes I want my kids to shine. Sometimes I want you to shine. It's not my moment. So I don't have to be important. Now, am I important? Of course. but not because I made it up. Just because I am, because we all are. Do you know what I mean?
Mostly, yeah. Well, I think for me, when I'm listening to it, what I think about is like just the idea of the present moment. When you're in the present moment, you're not thinking about these beliefs, and then your beliefs kind of make it so you're finding meaning for this belief out in the world, right? It's like the reticular activating system kind of scenario where you have this internal belief, so you need to show it out there, that it needs to read out in the physical world because it's going on in the mental world. And so what I wanted clarity on, what I was trying to catch was, you said, we're not getting rid of beliefs, right? We're not saying, okay, well, we're not replacing I'm not good enough with I'm good enough. What's the process do? It's the process of going deeper than that. And
we do eliminate beliefs. We
okay.
eliminate them permanently, gone. They never come back.
Okay.
That's what we are known for. That's my
Okay.
claim to fame. We help people eliminate the beliefs that keep them stuck. So let me take a pattern like fear of public speaking. Anybody listening have a fear of public speaking?
Probably most.
Yeah. So it's the number one fear in the country, which of course, oh, I can see him. Jerry Seinfeld said, if public speaking is the number one fear in the country and death is 2, that means that during a funeral, people would rather be in the coffin than doing the eulogy. I thought that was hilarious. So fear of public speaking is the only pattern that has the same beliefs for every person. There's 11 of them. Okay. I'm not good enough. I'm not important. What I have to say is not important. People are not interested in what I have to say. What makes me good enough is having other people think well of me. I'm not capable. I'm inadequate. And then they have a fear, and this is a whole nother podcast. They have a fear associated with criticism, judgment, not living up to an expectation, and rejection. I can get rid of fear of rejection with your audience in 5 minutes. So we have a process that helps get rid of emotional triggers. Okay. Now, I work with somebody, I say, where is your fear of public speaking when it's at its worst? And they say 10, most people, sometimes 8, sometimes 12. As we're getting rid of the beliefs, I say, close your eyes and imagine speaking in public. Where's your fear right now? And it goes down. By the last session, it should be 0 or 1, meaning like fraction. And that's only because they haven't done it. We did a research study with the University of Arizona on fear of public speaking, double blind, blah, blah, blah. All our studies are, very scientific. My husband was fanatic about that. And we produced statistically significant, I can't remember the numbers, against whatever else we did it against. Fear goes away. So you don't need to install new beliefs. If suddenly I'm not afraid of being criticized and judged, and I'm not afraid of not living up to an expectation, and I'm not afraid of rejection, and I don't believe that my worth and value is a function of how this talk goes, and I don't believe mistakes. Everybody knows, everybody's read every book under the sun about mistakes and failures being amazing and blah, 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 blah. And you all know all the rhetoric about it. And yet, I always say to people, they go, I don't have that belief. I say, really? When you make a mistake or quote unquote fail, do you say, way to go, Matt, that was a great learning opportunity? Or do you beat yourself up?
I definitely beat myself up.
So that's what everybody says. So if you beat yourself up, you must have the belief that mistakes and failures are bad, or you wouldn't beat yourself up. Elon Musk didn't send the rocket up and then go home and go, oh God, shit, it crashed. I'm such a loser. I can't believe it crashed. Maybe I'll do another one. he said, okay, what did we learn? And he goes back and does it again. And third time was a charm. So just eliminating the beliefs, if you get rid of a belief, people can't be trusted, people will hurt me, people are against me, whatever belief you have about people, and those beliefs are gone. I don't believe that anymore. Now you go to work, you're not going to just trust everybody. Everybody thinks, well, you get rid of beliefs, you just do the opposite. I was working with someone once who was my favorite population in the whole world is, if I can only work with one group of people, it would be people who are sexually abused. I was working with somebody once who had been molested by her grandfather. And she was getting rid of the belief men are dangerous, men can't be trusted. And halfway through the process, she goes, oh my God, Shelly, if I get rid of this belief, I'm going to trust all men and it's going to happen to me again. I said, no. This is fascinating. So most of you won't be watching me, but if I hold up a pad, imagine there's a box on the pad. And in the box called people can't be trusted, trusting people is not a possibility inside that box, right? Working alone is a possibility inside that box. Not having a lot of close friends is a possibility inside the box, people can't be trusted. But having a lot of close relationships, not a possibility. Trusting a man and getting a great relationship, not a possibility. When you eliminate the box, what happens is those possibilities that weren't possible before are possible. But you still have to choose. You still go through the same process. Should I trust this person or shouldn't I? The only difference is now you can.
Well, I love that. I love that analogy because it reminds me of the germ theory versus terrain theory debate in health, where the terrain theory says that if you get the body to homeostasis, it's going to be able to fight off basically anything. And the reason why your body is growing all this disease is because you're out of whack. So what you need to do is get rid of all of the things that you're doing that are out of whack. So you're not exercising, you're eating terrible food, you got all this toxicity you're putting in your body. So if you just get rid of that, then what happens is your body functions as it's supposed to. So it feels like the same way with your mind, where you remove these weeds that are causing this chaotic belief system, and now you just naturally function in the world without these limitations or inhibitions. Is inhibition the right word?
Yeah. I mean, I love what you just said. My mother told me, ready? We don't get depressed. Germs are nonsense. And we have very strong immune systems.
Wow.
I'm not going to tell you how old I am.
Smart woman.
I'm older and I have never had COVID. I don't get flu shots. I don't get, I'm like, I can play pickleball 4 hours a day on Saturday and Sunday. I wish I could play every day for that. I lift weights, I do yoga, I'm out in the world, I hike 5 miles. I have this belief from my childhood that I have a very strong immune system. So, I love that it was a great analogy, and I eat organic and I eat healthily and blah, 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 and I stack the deck, let's say that. But I didn't always, And I have 2 parents who lived to 93 and 95. My mother would still be here, I swear, if my father didn't take her. That's my belief. But they were married 73 years. If there was a contest, Matt, for the single worst eaters on the planet, I would enter them and they would win.
Wow.
They would win. They drank diet egg creams. There's a drink in
Oh,
New York
geez.
called an egg cream. It's chocolate soda,
What?
syrup, and
Oh
and
my God.
chocolate soda, milk, and chocolate syrup. Sorry, chocolate syrup, milk, and seltzer. So
Oh
when I
my
grew up,
God.
that was a big thing in New York, an egg
That's
cream,
horrible.
right? Diet egg creams.
Oh my
And
God, that's so funny.
insult to injury, right?
Yeah.
I mean, just nothing but processed foods. And I yelled at them and screamed at them. And, oh my God. And my mother died at 93 on no medication. She had nothing wrong with her at all.
Mm.
So, and my dad was 95 and he had diabetes since he was 45 and he was fine. So beliefs are very, very powerful. They really, really are. They run the show. And sometimes I just listen to people talk and they tell me what this one said and what that one said, and they should do this and they should blah, blah, blah. And all that stuff is great bandages, but you got to get the roots. You got to pull them out by the roots. And it's mind-bogglingly powerful when you do.
Yeah, and that reminds me of another story that I heard when I was going through police foundations, but they would talk about people who basically got shot and should die because they got shot in these spots where you basically should die, and they walk right through, and then they end up living. And then multiple cases where people got shot and they shouldn't die, they get like a little shot in the leg where there's no problem, and the person dies, and they're like, this happens over and over again. And there's many, many other examples. The work of Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a lot about placebo, which is, there's a lot of examples around that. So we do understand that our beliefs are incredibly powerful. And so obviously disarming or weeding our minds and our spirits of any limiting belief or something that would hold us back would be ideal, especially for people who have gone through trauma. So I am grateful that you do work with those types of people, because in my studies of human trafficking and trying to bring some awareness to that horrible nature and all this cyclical abuse. And I love your mission as well of, strong parents, strong families, because that's how it starts. You know what I mean? It's this separation and this cycle of abuse and all these other factors that go into perpetuating these things that harm innocent children. And it really pisses me off. And so I don't have the skills to help that type of person. So I'm glad that you're out there doing that. In your upcoming, and I'll only ask you maybe like one or two more questions, but in your upcoming book, Self-Made: The Surprising Solution to Success, I'm curious, what is your perspective for someone that comes to you and says, hey, you know what, I need to get my life in order. One of these areas is probably going to be wonky, whether it's health, whether it's relationships, whether it's money, career, so like, you know what, most people on this show, and myself included, we want to live our life purpose, under God, so we want to know we're going in the right direction. We're helping other people, but we're also financially stable. So what do you say to people who want to move in that direction? How do we use this process? So I got to go to your website and like try these, things,
So first of all, the book has a new name. The book
is
is
it?
called,
Oh no. Okay.
well, there's two things. The book
Yeah.
is called Hitting the Wall: Eliminate the Beliefs That Sabotage Your Business and Your Life. It is a book about entrepreneurship. So the last book I thought I'd ever write, somebody heard me speak. He's a serial entrepreneur and a lawyer, owns a law firm, an entertainment firm, and he was listening to me speak in Costa Rica. And he came over to me, he said, we have to write a book. That's the missing piece. He works with entrepreneurs. This is why entrepreneurs don't listen to me. He said, I give them great advice. And that's what my husband said. I give people great advice and they don't take it. When he was a consultant before he created the process. So anyway, I said, entrepreneurship, huh? And he said, yeah. I said, sure, why not? The truth is, it's a book for anybody, but it is called Hitting the Wall. It's coming out in June. But what I would suggest is we have a program called Natural Confidence, and it's 19 of the most common self-esteem beliefs that people have. The ones that we've been talking about, including mistakes and failures are bad, and what makes me good, and all those. And it's very reasonable, and I'm going to tell you how to eliminate a belief for free. So you go to eliminatebeliefs.com and eliminate a belief for free, and then it will take you to natural confidence. And if you feel like, oh my God, that belief is gone, get the program. And it may not handle every problem, it will not handle every problem in your life, but no matter what your pattern is, Matt, it could be fear of public speaking, it could be imposter syndrome, it could be fear of cold calls, sales stuff, whatever it is, relationship stuff, your self-esteem beliefs underlie all of them. So if nothing totally goes away, fear of public speaking might, some of them might, but even if it doesn't completely disappear, it will be so much better. You will not believe it. And you never know, patterns can go away.
Yeah, beliefs are so foundational. And I think about it on this polarity scale. If you're holding yourself back, let's say 80%, right? You're like on a scale of 80%, or let's say 50-50. So you're at 80%, I'm afraid of failure, versus going all the way down to 20%. That's going to be a huge increase. And I remember being mentored by Michael Lozier, who wrote the book, one of the books on the law of attraction. And I really resonated with his approach because he had a neuro-linguistic programming approach to it. So it was tactical, it was tangible. I could apply the process. I like the stories, but I'm like, I need a process, and then I need to be able to test my results. And we would go into the areas of people's lives. Whenever I'd coach people, we'd look at the areas. And if we're looking at a holistic approach of our life, we'll go with the one that is the biggest inhibitor, right? So if you got a good career, good money, okay relationships, but terrible health, let's start with the health. Because if we got a 90 to a 95, it's not going to help you that much. What you need to do is you got to pull up that 15%, and most people have that. And what that does, it's cyclical. It gives energy to everything else. It makes us more balanced. And so with the same idea, I think with your belief system and how you work with that is, if we can just take things from, even a percentage point, from 80 to 50, or it's like, I think 50 is like that teeter, right? So if we go 50% positive, it's like, oh, it's inhibiting, to like, oh, we're at the 40 or 30%. It's like no longer inhibiting. We can kind of tip the scale, if you know what I'm trying to say with the 50% analogy,
I would never, no, for me, it's all or nothing. So when a belief goes away, it's gone. If you get rid of every belief underlying a pattern, it will be gone. And the only reason I said that about natural confidence is because I'm very, I have a lot of integrity. So if somebody works with me, your pattern will be gone. There's no 30%, 20%. You stay with me, it's going to be gone. You will not do it anymore. It will not happen for the most part. When you do the program, it's just self-esteem beliefs. So it's not necessarily beliefs about people or money or the world, but those self-esteem beliefs are the ones that you have to get rid of no matter what. And if you are more confident and you walk into a situation, it's not like 30% or 50%, you're just going to feel more confident. You get rid of the belief. It's a good story. I just worked with somebody, got rid of the belief I'm not important. Never spoke up in a meeting. Okay. So it comes in to the next session and I said, so what'd you notice? And he goes, nothing really. And I said, oh. So he said, he thought about it and he goes, oh, starts to laugh. I said, what? And he goes, I was in a meeting, he said, and I spoke up and I said my idea, which was was not consistent with what they were talking about. I never would have done that before. And here's why. When you have a belief, the little voice in your head talks. You're not important. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. Don't say anything. They're going to laugh at you. Blah, 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 blah. It's this whole conversation. When you get rid of the belief, there's no conversation. You're just sitting there and you raise your hand and you speak. So you're not as aware of the behavior because there was no voice talking to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that example there just gave me a deepening of an understanding. And I just thought of it as many people are very afraid to approach women. And I was thinking, came up with my younger self, I would never go up to a girl because it was terrifying. And so what would happen is if you had the idea, then immediately the inner dialogue starts. And the second that sucker starts, good luck, like trying to counteract that with whatever your consciousness is going to try to do. So if it doesn't, if you literally had the ideas, like, I'm going to go talk to that woman, and you just walk up to them and open up your mouth, there's going to be no fear there. And you have no idea what's going to happen. You just did it.
Exactly.
And now that I'm following this all the way through, actually, my one buddy who was good at it, I go, what do you, it's like, how do you do that? He goes, I just don't think about it. I walk right up. And I was like, well, that makes sense now. Meanwhile, I was like, I'm too terrified. So you could think about that in any scenario. And then even worse would be if you are thinking about moving in the entrepreneurship way, or if you wanted to create something that was meaningful to you, and you had all of this, your self-esteem issues, right? Well, one after another, especially with this time delay. And then, you know what, you got to do a little research, and you do, get some research going, and you got an iPad document or whatever, and a little bit more. That whole dialogue's been firing off everywhere from every angle nonstop. And so much harder to persevere through that than to actually get to a space where you're not getting bombarded by your own internal dialogue. So that's very powerful proposition for people, and I'm excited for checking out the process myself. I know we've been chatting for a while. I've loved this. I think beliefs and limiting beliefs and just having a powerful foundation for your mindset is the most important thing a person can do, essentially. As people, as adults, if we can do that, we're going to be less harmful to other people, because we're not, our self-worth isn't on the line, and we're not operating from lower traumatic triggers, basically, right? It's like, from a martial arts perspective, nobody happy, whole, and harmonious and full of self-love is trying to fight me. You know what I mean? Is somebody who's got something seriously wrong is trying to fight me. You know what I mean?
That. That's
it's like,
great.
right? So you would never need that. And so as someone who does martial art, I don't need to be whacking anybody or punching them in the face because there's something wrong with them. Like, yo, if you get to that space where you don't have that anger, I was like, yo, what's wrong with you? Can I help you? You know what I mean? Then that's a very powerful space. But when you're a young man, it's like, you don't talk to me like that, I'm going to punch you in the nose.
That's why, Matt, I say what you read in my bio. If you parent consciously, war will end. Because if you raise a child who abhors violence and you never hit them, you don't scream at them, when they grow up and there's problems, they're not going to say, oh, let's kill each other. It's just not going to be in their paradigm set of beliefs. That's paradigm, right? So I love what you said. If you're whole and complete and come from love, and that's why parenting is so sacrosanct to me, because you're raising a little human that's going to go out and change the world, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I totally agree. It's so important that we are the best parents possible so we can, bring up the next generation. That's what I'm hopeful for, seeing the hope and the love in my daughter's eyes. The world kind of goes to hell in a handbasket. Holy crap. But this has been phenomenal. I very much appreciate you and your work. If people want to find out more about you, they want to dive deeper, they want to try this process, they want to engage, where do they go?
EliminateBeliefs.com.
Easy
peasy.
Thanks so much for coming on the show.
If you want to learn about it, you can go to Lefkoe Institute, Lefkoe Institute.com.
Awesome. Amazing. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks for having me.